29th of February 1949, a woman named Constance Lane walked into a police station in Horsham, Sussex. She was worried about her employer, an elderly widow named Olive Durand-Deacon, who had not been seen for 2 days. Lane gave the police a name to look into, a man her employer had been working with, John George Haigh. Within hours, detectives traced Haigh to the Onslow Court Hotel in South Kensington. When they brought him in for questioning, he was calm, almost bored. He answered their questions with practiced ease, and then he said something extraordinary. He told them she would never be found, because there was nothing left to find. John George Haigh was born in 1909 in Stamford, Lincolnshire. His parents belonged to the Plymouth Brethren, a rigidly austere Christian sect that forbade cinema, theatre, and dancing. His mother dressed him in velvet suits and told anyone who would listen that John was destined for something extraordinary. Outwardly, he was the picture of a devout boy raised in the fear of God. Beneath that surface, something else was forming. By his 20s, Haigh had moved to London and begun a career in fraud. In 1934, he was caught and sent to prison. It was a short sentence, but it taught him that the justice system was slow and predictable. The war changed everything. In 1944, Haigh reconnected with William McSwan, a former employer who owned property and had savings. Haigh invited McSwan to his workshop at 45 Gloucester Road on the 9th of September. He struck McSwan on the head with a lead-weighted cosh, lowered his body into a 40-gallon steel drum, and filled it with concentrated sulphuric acid. Over several days, the acid consumed flesh, bone, and clothing. Haigh poured the dark residue into the drains. He forged documents transferring McSwan's assets, collected his rent, and told McSwan's parents their son had gone to Scotland. He had discovered that without a body, the law struggled to prove a murder had occurred. Within weeks, McSwan's parents, Donald and Amy, grew anxious. Haigh invited them to Gloucester Road as well. Donald was killed and dissolved on the 2nd of October. Amy followed shortly after. 3 members of one family, erased. Haigh sold their properties, checked into the Onslow Court Hotel, hired a valet, and spent his evenings at the Savoy. By 1948, he needed fresh income. He met Dr. Archibald Henderson and his wife Rosalie at the Onslow Court. He persuaded them to sell their home and move to a guest house while he handled a property purchase. He drove them to Crawley, Sussex, where he had rented an isolated workshop at 2 Leopold Road. Rosalie was shot first on the 12th of February. Her husband followed moments later. Both bodies went into drums of acid. Haigh forged power of attorney and walked away with £8,000. Olive Durand-Deacon was 83, sharp-minded, and independently wealthy. She lived at the Onslow Court Hotel and was developing a business involving artificial fingernails. Haigh offered his manufacturing knowledge. On the 18th of February 1949, he drove her to Crawley. She was shot in the back of the head and placed into a drum of acid, but Olive had a close friend, Constance Lane, and Constance Lane was not the kind of woman to sit quietly. When Lane reported Olive missing, Detective Inspector Albert Mahon began pulling at threads. He found a criminal record, forged property transfers, and a trail of missing people connected to one well-dressed man. When Mahon confronted Haigh, the killer told police that Mrs. Durand-Deacon was dead, that her body had been destroyed, and that he had done the same to 8 others, casually, as though reading from a ledger. Pathologist Keith Simpson examined the drums at Crawley. From the sludge of dissolved tissue, he recovered fragments the acid had not entirely consumed, 3 gallstones, a partial set of dentures, a fragment of a human foot bone. The dentures matched Olive's dental records. The gallstones matched her medical history. The trial opened at Lewes Assizes in July 1949. His defense argued insanity. The jury was not persuaded. The verdict was guilty. On the 10th of August, John George Haigh was hanged at Wandsworth Prison. He was 40 years old. Haigh believed he could dissolve human beings into nothing and walk away untouched. He was wrong. The acid consumed almost everything, but not the gallstones, not the dentures, not the tiny Steuben fraction of bone that Keith Simpson pulled from the sludge with a pair of tweezers and held up to the light. That fraction was enough.